Hi, this is Rachel Stone with Commonwealth Computer Training in Richmond, Virginia, and we'll be talking about data validation in Excel 2010. Now, data validation is an Excel feature you can use to define restrictions on what data can or should be entered in your cells. You can configure this data validation to prevent users from entering data that is not valid, or allow them to enter invalid data with a preceding warning so that they're aware it's invalid if it's an exception, let's say. And you can also provide input messages with instructions to help them figure out what they were supposed to be putting in that cell. This is invaluable when you want to share a workbook with others in your organization, and you want to make sure that the data entered in your workbook is accurate and consistent. It can restrict data to predefined items in a list. You can restrict numbers that are entered, dates, the number of text characters, and so on. On the spreadsheet in front of us, we would like to add some restrictions here. I need data validation, so my users are only allowed to enter a level 1, 2, or 3 class, or they're only allowed to select an instructor from a predefined list, or they're only allowed to enter dates between January 1st and June 30th of this year, or a 2-digit room code. So let's start with our level first. And I'm going to select this column because, of course, I want to select it to affect it. So I'll select my level column on the Data tab, go to Data Validation. It defaults to allow any value. From the drop-down list, I can see all the different things that the validation can restrict. Through this particular column, I'm working with whole numbers, so I'll select that. I want it to be between 1 and 3. If I didn't already need between, I could have chosen something else from this list, for example, greater than or equal to, and so on. My second tab is for the input message. And this is a message that will display when a cell in this selected range, in this case being this column, is selected. Normally, I just give the title for the message the same title that I have for that column. So I'll put level, and their input message will be to enter level 1, 2, or 3. And I have an error alert tab. Now this is important because this determines what will and will not be allowed in the cell. If I leave this with a stop message, that means that it will not allow them to proceed without making sure that this data matches your set criteria. So let's say if a 4 is entered in this cell, with the stop turned on, it only lets them retry or cancel. That's it. So it will not allow that invalid data. If I choose a warning message, it will pop up a message that I type in saying, whoops, this doesn't match the valid data. Are you sure you want to proceed? In which case they can choose yes, and it will allow them to continue to enter the invalid data, or they could say no and then retype the data. And the last choice is just an information box. It just pops up an FYI, but of course allows them to proceed. In this case, let's try a warning message. I'll put in the title. Again, that matches my column header, which is level. And my error message will be, this should be level 1, 2, or 3. And they look at that and say it should be, and they determine, well, in this case it's a rare instance where we have a 4, they can proceed. I'll go ahead and click OK to apply that to this column. Now for my instructor column, I want people to select an instructor name from a predetermined list. I don't want them just choosing anybody from the company to do a class, so I want them to select from a preset list, which I have entered already on another tab. So I will select my instructor column, validation, settings, and in this case I will choose list from my drop-down menu. I'll click within my source field here and then go to the Lists tab and select my list of names. You could also type the names here if they weren't already elsewhere in your workbook. I'll click the Input Message tab, and for the title I'll match my column name, which is Instructor, and just select a name from the list. And I'm going to make a copy of that I'm going to error alert. This case, I definitely want to stop message because I don't want any name of an instructor that's not already approved. So I want to make sure this is a stop. Here I'll put in instructor, and I'll put in you must, and I'll paste in my other message. Select a name from the list. And I'll click OK. Now let's do a date range. I'll select my beginning date column, go back up to data validation, settings, and for allow, I'll choose date. And in this case, I want it between, but again, I have options for other ways to do my date ranges. But I'll put in January the 1st through June the 30th. That's my range. My input message, and this is called beginning date. Dates must be between 1/1 and 6/30/2013. Now my error message here, I also want to stop message again. Beginning date. Dates must be first half of 2013. We'll click OK. And our last one will be our training room code. Notice these are 2-digit codes, so I want to limit the text length. I'll select the column, data validation, settings, and I'll choose text length. And I want this to be 2 digits, so I'll choose equal to and type in a 2. Input message, let's just skip this time. We've seen it enough times at this point. And my error message, in this case I'll go with a warning. In the rare instance it may not be a 2-digit code. And I'll call this training room code. And my error message will be, this is normally a 2-digit code. Okay, so now let's test our validation. We're going to enter a new class into our list. We'll start with Word 2010. Now for my level, let me test this. I'm going to type in a 4, and it's giving me the warning message. This should be level 1, 2, or 3. It says continue. And so I can say no and enter a different number, but in this case I'll say yes. I want to put that 4 in. Now as soon as I land on instructor, notice my drop down arrow appears, and I can select a name from the list. Okay. Now if I try to type a different name, notice because I gave this a stop message, it won't let me enter it in. So I'll choose retry, and I'll add somebody from the list. For my date, I'll try putting in invalid data of July the 1st. And again, the error message is preventing me from doing that, so I'll retry, and I will put in, let's say 6/21. And it took that. And for my training room code, I'll put in Northwest. This is normally a 2-digit code, continue, and I realize, you know what, I should have put NW instead of Northwest. So I'll say no, replace it with NW, and proceed. So these are just a few examples of setting your data validation, and the last thing I want to demonstrate is going back and adding a new item to your list. Now I've added a new instructor, so I'll go over to my source list, put in their name, go back to my data list, select the instructor column, data validation, and on my settings tab I can just redo my range of cells. In this case it's now been extended to A7, so I can either reselect them or just simply change this 6 here to a 7 to include that last cell, and click OK. And now when I go back here, you'll see my new instructor is added to the list. Thanks so much for watching. Again, this was Excel Data Validation with Rachel Stone at Commonwealth Computer Training, and have a great day.